Welcome to Art Bites. My name is Mr. Heaton. This is our first episode in our series on the visual elements. Today we are going to be looking at line, which is the first of the visual elements. There are 7 visual elements overall, so there is line, shape, form, tone, colour, texture and pattern. These visual elements make up art as we know it. So, looking at line. Line is used a lot in art. It is often the basis for other visual elements as well. Line is used to create shape and tone and form and textures and patterns. It is a really useful visual element in the art world. So, lines can be described in 4 different ways. The first of which is our direction, so we can talk about the direction of a line. So lines can be horizontal. The word horizontal comes from the word horizon. You can also have lines which are vertical, which comes from the Latin word for up above. And you can get lines which are diagonal. So those are words we can use to describe lines on their own, but we can also talk about lines in relation to one another. So when we talk about parallel lines, those are lines which follow one another in the same direction. In maths, they have to be next to each other, and they also have to be in exactly the same direction and not change direction at all. In art, we can have parallel lines which are not straight. So long as they follow the same direction, they can change direction at the same time as well. So we'd call these roughly parallel. We can also talk about lines as being perpendicular. So that is when one line comes out of another at 90 degrees or a right angle, which you'll probably have seen in maths before. Another way we can describe line is length. Now, length is quite a simple way to describe lines, so we can have lines that are long or short or teeny. We can describe those lines in that one is longer than the others. We can describe them in relation to one another. That is a really useful way to describe lines, but again, it's quite a simple way. A more complex way to describe lines that you won't use outside of art as much is to describe its weight. So when we talk about a line's weight, this is about how thick that line is and perhaps how dark it is as well sometimes. So when I work with my pencil, if I press really heavily, I will get quite a heavy line. If I press from the side, I will get a thicker line as well that is also nice and heavy if I press quite hard. If I press really, really lightly, barely letting my pencil touch the paper, just using the weight of the pencil itself, push down, I can get some really light lines. You might not even be able to see those on the camera. I can press with a medium weight in between. Notice how when I hold my pencil from a higher point like this, I can get a really thin line, and holding it further towards the end here and more on an angle, I can get, let's try that again, I can get a much thicker line. This is something you'll need to pay attention to when you're working in art and design. So when you hold a pencil, you need to think really carefully about how you hold it. When we learn how to write, we learn to hold our pencil really near the end. That can be useful when working with details in art and design. But realistically, when we're wanting to work, a lot of the time we want to be able to hold our pencil a little bit looser. So it's better to hold it on this sort of midpoint here, which gives us a much more looser, more flowing feel to our lines, and it allows us to use our whole arm rather than just our wrist, which gives us this really limited movement. So finally, we've discussed the direction of line, we've discussed length, and we've discussed weight. Finally, and probably the more interesting of the 4, you can discuss a line's quality. Now, quality is about how that line looks. So we've already got a lot of straight lines. So straight lines are a quality. So straight is a quality of a line. You could also have lines that are wavy or zigzaggy. You could also have lines which are curly. You could have lines which are dashed or broken, or you could have lines which are dotted. You can have lots of different types of lines, and there are lots of different words out there to describe lines, and I'd encourage you to go and see if you can find some words of your own or even make some up to describe the qualities of lines. So those are 4 different areas that you can use to describe a line. So we've got direction, we've got length, which is quite simple, we've got weight, and we've got quality. Thank you very much for listening. We will be discussing shape next time.